Hey guys, I'm Hilson and this is the individual component I am completing for the ATS2440 Media Productions Unit. Today I'll be talking about mandatory sentencing and how it's an ineffective measure to curb and decrease youth and especially youth Indigenous imprisonment rates. But before I get into the nooks and crannies of this video, I would like to pay my respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia. So in 1991, there was a Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. This was undertaken with the aim of first reducing deaths in custody, but secondly to also reduce as a whole Indigenous imprisonment rates in general. Unfortunately, out of the 339 recommended implementations, not a lot of these have actually been implemented. And as you're probably aware of, Indigenous crime has increased rapidly throughout this period.
So since the 1991 Royal Commission, Indigenous imprisonment rates have actually doubled. 52% of juvenile prisoners are Indigenous, and the youth Indigenous imprisonment rate is 348 per 100,000. This means Indigenous people are 25 times more likely to be imprisoned than non-Indigenous people. Mandatory sentencing establishes an exact penalty for each category of offence individually. There are legislative interventions by the government that set a minimum and maximum sentence for certain offences. They curtail a judge's power to take into account a case's particular circumstances, which may reduce the sentence. Mandatory sentencing can be handed out for crimes as petty as stealing a bottle of water or stealing a pack of cookies.
In 2008, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children actually called for an end to mandatory sentencing. This is because they found that it discriminated against Indigenous youth prisoners and also created a disproportionate overrepresentation of Indigenous people in Australian prisons. Instead, I believe, and others also believe, that justice reinvestment is the key. Justice reinvestment means taking money that would normally be spent on prisons and moving it and directing it into sectors where we can build community-based programs that are culturally appropriate to help intervene and prevent Indigenous and youth Indigenous crime.
Hilde Becks of the University of Western Australia has slammed politicians for claiming that they are having harsher measures such as mandatory reporting in response to the public's view that crime is rising. This is not always the case. In fact, violent crime has actually decreased significantly over the past decade. Various pieces of research in and outside of Australia have confirmed that if the public is well informed about the particular circumstances of the crime and the sentences imposed, they agree to a large extent to the judge's decisions. The way forward, then, is to teach the public about what is really going on. This should happen beyond unsubstantiated claims by talkback media and sensationalist press. We must be well informed and we must inform the public sphere about the true statistics and true challenges of crime and especially youth Indigenous imprisonment in Australia. Mandatory sentencing is not the key. Crime rates have not decreased, and in fact it has only increased youth Indigenous imprisonment. In order to rectify this issue, we must reinstate judges and the court with the necessary power. Mandatory sentencing should not be encouraged. You and I as citizens of Australia need to be more well informed, and we must inform others about the issues. This way we can engage in a public debate and gain meaningful information and promote citizenship within the public sphere. Join me and my group in our first steps towards ending mandatory sentencing and reducing youth Indigenous imprisonment rates. Thank you.